Yo guys, Vishness Gen here, back with more Marvel Rivals content. In today's episode will be the best tank gameplay in the entire game for each individual Vanguard, the beginning of a new series to this channel, and kicking off the series is none other than The Thing, showing you the best gameplay possible. Now the catch of this is that I have to have earned the Lord icon on each of the heroes in this series before I can even upload them to the channel. So as you can imagine, this will take some time to complete, but I'm always up for the challenge, and in this video I will give you advice on how to use the hero, the strengths and weaknesses of that hero, the do's and the don'ts from my own experiences, as well as any tips that I've learned along the way for both the character in general, but also on how best to earn the Lord icon as well in the fastest and most efficient way for each of the heroes. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So just as the general overview, first things first, The Thing is a brawling and hybrid diving style tank who can peel back to his team very effectively with his kit when it's managed properly, as well as being the ultimate disruptor for the enemy team for their pace and their setup. In my opinion, he is very good and effective at doing this. And now to be clear, this is not a guide on The Thing's abilities or anything. So if you are new to the game and you wanted to understand his abilities better, I do actually have a guide breaking down all of the character's abilities in more detail in the link in the description below to explain that in a bit more detail. But assuming you guys understand this character and want to learn how to use him, or you just want to see some high tier gameplay, or you just want to know how to best to get into Lord because you're Lord farming, whatever it may be, the biggest skill gap I think that players misunderstand with The Thing is pacing and kit management. Like Thor, he's a very effective tank when used in both the right system, but also when paired and with the sort of required style. The reason I use the term required is because the game to game sort of nature of rivals, he can actually be used very differently, even in a different system or against a different setup very often, and you'll find that you'll never get the same sort of team dynamic, of course, unless you're playing with your own team. But if you're playing on your own and you're solo tanking, you can find that it will change to game, and you have to play to what is required for your team, and therefore that sort of relates to how effective he is as a hero. And what I meant by this is he can now basically, with the new ability, allows him to hit flyers and can be used to actually counter aerial players as well, or at least mitigate their effectiveness, and especially when paired alongside another hero such as like Hulk, a dual brawling force, which I played against before, and I promise you this is a real problem to deal with these two when they're paired together and on the same sort of level and staying on the same wavelength. When the two are on the same page, it's very difficult to deal with, especially for the enemy team. Although grounded and brawling style tanks, they are both very effective and can even affect and impact aerial players or flyers. Now, the reason I want to mention that as a sort of an example first is just basically a different and more unique approach on how you can actually use The Thing. Even though he's a grounded and sort of melee character who brawls, he can still be used to be dealing with aerial players and flyers as well. So just to give you guys an example. And now just touching back on the system and the meta of the character, because unlike some heroes, The Thing is very versatile in my opinion. He can work alongside most heroes in this game and is what we refer to as an off tank, not typically used in a one tank system due to his strengths and weaknesses, but due to his compatibility with other tanks and heroes. Now, the only three tanks I personally would avoid using him alongside is the likes of Captain America and Venom, due to their sort of independent nature and the in and out playstyles where they'll basically leave your backline vulnerable but effectively pressure the other team's backline as well. So basically pairing The Thing alongside them means that your supports are going to be very vulnerable and left on their own, which isn't always a good thing. Pretty much for the most part, you're going to leave your team exposed, especially at the higher levels. And the other one is Groot, due to his walls and The Thing really being hindered by these walls as he struggles to retreat back to his teammates, of course, when needed, and therefore means you basically have to play far more conservative, which also means you are not leaning on the character's strengths. So I'd also avoid using him alongside Groot. I'd also add that he can be used as a single tank, but I'd advise against it unless your team has maybe a Mr. Fantastic as that duelist, that third duelist, or of course in a 3 to support setup, because that would definitely work as well, because you're going to get sufficient heals, which is what he's going to need. He's going to need something to back up into and be able to constantly keep going in and out and diving and then coming straight back to help your team. And of course, in a 3 support setup, your supports are less likely to be exposed or vulnerable because there's 3 of them healing. So I would just say that generally as just a general overview and for the system and the meta of the character. Of course, unless you're playing with a good team who just understands what you're going to do, as in what The Thing does and what he's really good at doing, what your team lacks, and more importantly, what you need to recognize as a thing, and understanding what being a solo tank requires, and really leaning on your hero strengths. These are all key factors in order to actually solo tank if you're going to do it. But of course, like I said, he is an off tank. Now, for the strengths and weaknesses of this character, he's excellent at brawling, charging, and disrupting the enemy team. Using and leaning on his Yancey street charge ability, the R1, he can really and effectively knock enemies around, preventing supports from healing, damaging them whilst they're also adding to his survivability, being a great distraction or bait for your for your team to allow your duelists to get easier picks and make your DPS rolls far easier. To me, this is really basically an underrated aspect of his and a few other tanks in the games, like Cap and Venom's sort of roles. Vanguards who go above and beyond time and time again in the scoreboard stats do things that aren't directly reflected on the scoreboard, board, but in the eyes of many, these tanks will not get their flowers and not get their respect that they've earned, especially when doing things based on the eye test that other players who maybe at the lower ranks wouldn't really appreciate, and they'll straight away look at the scoreboard and think, well, you're not doing as much as you probably think you are, or whatever it may be. But in true and in nature, you will actually find that some players are just really causing the enemy team support's lives to be misery, and that actually adds a whole lot of value to the team, because cutting down on support ults and them getting their ultimates as effectively as possible means that they're going to get them less often, and means you're going to more likely win team fights, which is again the key, especially when you're looking to win games and playing in the competitive level. And it's just like the bigger picture aspect, because believe me, I've got 20 plus hours on this character. I've played him at all different levels of the game, up to Celestial, where I can comfortably hang, and I can assure you there is things that you will and can do as the thing which at the highest level won't go unnoticed, and your teammates, especially duelists, will really appreciate your impact, as it alleviates that pressure on your teammates and making their lives far easier and the game just more winnable. As an off tank, he can be very effective when paired with a shielding style tank such as Magneto, Doctor Strange, or Emma Frost. These are heroes that I found he works best with and really compatible with. Your main tank can then protect your healers from ranged damage and AoE, whilst you as the off tank can charge, brawl, dive, and pressure the enemy team, and then leap back to your teams when needed for a retreat, to be healed, or to peel back if necessary to support and protect your teammates when required. Now, as for his weaknesses, once you are caught without your charge ability in a fight, or when you're too far pressed up, if you're going to sort of be out too far of that leap range to your teammates, you will often easily be dealt with and exposed, which is the key. So basically, track how long is left on that ability, on that charge, so that when you're charging, you ensure you end up in a good position to either engage from a safer spot, or to ensure you're not going to be an easy target so that you can leap back to your teammates. Also, tracking where your team is just key. Making sure someone is pushed up far enough to allow you to actually back out is crucial. Being practically immune to crowd control for this character makes it a lot easier to avoid being stunned, etc. But then just really ensuring that you are aware of your leaps and how many you have available and when you use them is often the biggest skill gap in my opinion. Tracking cooldowns, etc. I guess is very standard for the most part in this game for all the heroes, so I guess it's not really specific to this hero or the thing, but I would generally or definitely just say it's more important for the thing than most heroes to be aware of, because like I said, if you are sort of leaning on his strengths and his characteristics, if you go too far ahead and you're not aware of his cooldowns and when his abilities are going to expire or run out, that is going to leave you exposed and you are going to be dealt with very easily. Now, as for the do's and the don'ts, the biggest tips on what I would do and not do, basically, I guess, from my own experience, would be the following. Now, the first thing I would say is going to be greatly appreciated by all my support players out there. The best thing you can do is when you're an off tank, remember to peel and protect your supports. It's criminal how many players forget that the most important heroes on the team to make sure that you are keeping your healers alive at all times. So you have to be aware of their position as well as they have to be aware of yours. It goes both ways, and if you are just charging around all game and you're leaping at enemies with the new ability, you're going to leave your teammates vulnerable and likely to be dove on as well. So just make sure if you are the second tank, it is your primary objective to actually protect those healers as well as sort of backing up your main tank as well. So just remember that as the number one golden rule. Now, as for number two, as a follow-up to that, point number two is to make sure you position yourself well. Don't leave yourself out and exposed. You can sometimes lean yourself out of like cover and let yourself sort of take some damage, and that way you're going to actually allow your healers to sort of feed their ultimate. That's a little bit of a strategy, but then again, you have to look on the counterpart and that you're going to be feeding whoever is hitting you their ultimate as well. But I guess just generally make yourself easy to heal when needed or when you retreat. It really helps out your supports out a lot and allows you to get back into the fight far quicker when you're healed back up to full health, and also, as I said, gives them their ultimate far quicker. Also, making sure you know if you're too far pushed up. If you're solo diving at the enemy, you're going to be dealt with very quickly and leave your team in numbers, especially at the high level. I promise you, if you're constantly just doing the same thing, you're just constantly charging and then diving back, they're going to eventually change, stun you, or whatever it may be, and you're going to get caught out and leave your team in a numbers disadvantage. So just bear that in mind. As for point number three, I guess for the don'ts, avoid doing the same thing over and over again. Again, like I just sort of said, if it works, don't fix it, of course. Like if it constantly just keeps working, don't change it up. But there's a real fine line, and when the enemy team figures out your approach or your strategy individually or even as a team, the thing is a lot easier to expose than most heroes, as he has no real range attack and relies heavily on brawling and diving. So being aware of the enemy team's changes in heroes or even in strategy is just key, like their individual setup. If they go to 3 support or whatever it may be, if the enemy team starts singling you out or baiting you, read the signs, follow up a teammate or dive back to your team, or even just stay as a unit, or even consider changing the hero in general. Now, my personal advice based on experience and ranking, generally I'd say the thing is fairly easy to use. With everything I've said so far, once your team learns his abilities and cooldowns and you manage how to sort of use his kit effectively, he can be one of the best impact heroes in the entire game, I promise you. Like I said, I've played with duelists who just sort of greatly appreciate and will put in chat, or my own friends who play duelists, and they will say how much easier their role is when you're playing this character really, really well. Like generally, based on my own sort of experience and ranking, I would say that the thing is fairly easy to use. With everything I've said so far, once you learn his abilities and his cooldowns, how you manage his kit effectively, he can be one of the best impact heroes, as I've said. So I'd rank him personally in the top 5 in the game. He's one of my personal favorites, and I'd say I'm probably the best at using him than any other hero in the game. It's why I'm slightly biased towards him, and it's one of the reasons why I wanted to sort of make him as the first episode for this series, to be around him, because hopefully this helps and has taught you guys something new about this hero. As for getting him to Lord and the easiest and most efficient ways to do this, I'd say firstly, don't focus solely on just using him and only him. I guess that's kind of general to all Lord characters if you're grinding that out, because why I would sort of suggest not doing that, my personal advice is to have multiple heroes on the go, as using the thing only for 20 plus hours straight is just not a good idea. Why? Because some maps you will find that he just won't work effectively. Some lineups or systems you will play in or against will make him less efficient, meaning you'll spend extra time unnecessarily and really struggle against certain team comps. Secondly, I'd also say it's more fun having multiple heroes on the go. Although playing one at a time will make you learn the character faster and technically better at that character in a sense, having a break from a hero really does allow you to develop a better understanding of the character and the game in general, as playing different heroes or roles can often teach you more about the game. Playing like support or duelist can really allow you to figure out key changes in a map dynamic, or allow you to exploit them better the next time you play that map as the thing, because you have now developed that sort of extra awareness of a different role or a different lane, or perhaps different angles, power spots, or flanking lanes, etc. All of these different factors can really go in sort of in the long run, really affect you and impact how effective you are at playing a certain character. So I guess that would generally be 2 different things I would say for learning and how to get Lord as efficiently possible. And then finally, not every game is going to be a good one for you and the hero you pick. For example, if you only played the thing and you had to be the solo tank for several different games because your teammates just don't pick Vanguard, which does happen unfortunately. As a Vanguard main myself, it does happen, I assure you, and it really does put a lot of weight on your shoulders and reliance on you being really good at playing that character, because if you leave your team without a tank and you die quite often, you're going to leave your team in a massive disadvantage. You will often struggle more in these games when you're playing as a single tank, as your other teams can just basically focus more onto you, and you can find yourselves less likely to charge at enemies, because you basically need to be more conservative with his abilities in a single tank setup. But also your role, you're less effective and you're sort of leaning away from your strengths rather than on them. And by doing this, you're also using the street charge less, which in effect, if you didn't know, is one of the character's specific Lord challenges. Now, every character obviously has their standard setup. If you're a tank, you have to block damage. If you're a duelist, you have to get final hits and so on. All of these factors go into it. But at the bottom of the Lord icon, the 4th challenge, it's always hero specific. And for the actual thing character, it is that you have to knock enemies around into the air using this R1 ability, the Yancey Street Charge, and the more you use it, the faster you'll earn your Lord icon, which means if you're using him in a single tank setup, you're going to use it less likely more often than not, and if you're in an off-tank setup where you're playing as the second tank, you can probably use it more often than you want to. Therefore, you're going to use that ability more, therefore you're going to get Lord quicker. That is literally the way you want to do it. You want to try and lean and figure out that 4th category, whatever it requires you to do, and then that way you can start leaning on that ability and whatever it may be to get you that Lord faster. If you guys are looking to get the Lord icon on all of the heroes, of course, like myself, because as a player, that's just something I've always prided myself on. I've always been like a completionist player, like Call of Duty, for example. If you guys aren't new to the channel and you weren't aware, I do create Call of Duty content, and something I always went for was master camos and stuff like that. It's the same sort of concept, grinding out all of the heroes. Not only does help develop you as a player, learning all the different heroes, but just enjoying the game more, and that's kind of the key part here, and which is why I kind of wanted to make this series, to get the character to Lord, grind them out, and then give everyone my advice on that character and what it sort of requires, and how you want to get better at them, and how you get them to Lord, etc., stuff like that. Now, in summary, he is the perfect off-tank or secondary tank who complements various different heroes in the game, and when used in the right system, abilities and cooldowns managed properly, he can be a real takeover hero, especially when his ultimate is timed right to either catch the entire enemy team with a huge stun, or use to bait out an early ultimate for the enemy team to dictate team fights and control the playing field. I'd highly recommend using him. He's personally one of my favorites in the entire game. Like I said, I think I'm probably the best at using this character, or at least just Vanguards in general anyways. But if you guys have enjoyed the video, as always, don't forget to like and subscribe, as it massively helps me out. And if you have any comments or thoughts about the thing, or any cool clips that you want to share, or any advice on my videos, please let me know down in the comments and I'll get right back to you. I'm Vision SGN. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.